The afternoon my life changed forever started like any other quiet day. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my reading glasses halfway down my nose, a stack of bills on one side, a mug of lukewarm tea on the other. The late light was coming in through the curtains in that soft, yellow way it does in the fall, catching the dust motes drifting above the table. The house was so still I could hear the wall clock ticking behind me, steady as a heartbeat. Every few seconds it would click, and every minute the furnace would sigh on and off. That's what my days had become at 68, the small, reliable sounds of an old house and an old man keeping each other company. On the wall in front of me, just beyond the pile of envelopes, were the two faces that had been my world. Margaret, my wife, caught in a laugh that reached all the way to her eyes, frozen there in a silver frame. And beside her, our daughter Lisa at maybe 8 years old, holding a crooked birthday cake we'd made together. I looked up at those pictures more often than I looked out the window. I was writing a check for the electric bill, my hand cramping a little the way it does now, when my phone buzzed against the table. It startled me, that sudden vibration in all that quiet. I don't get many calls these days. I turned it over, expecting maybe a reminder from the pharmacy or one of those spam calls about extended warranties. Instead, on the screen, it said, Daniel, attorney. Daniel almost never texted. In 15 years, he'd called me from his office phone, left voicemails, sent letters on heavy paper with his name across the top. A text from him felt wrong before I even opened it. I swiped it open and the words hit me like a punch. Edward, call me right now. It's urgent. Do not sign anything your daughter brings you. For a moment I thought my vision had gone blurry from my eyes, not the screen. I rubbed at them with the heel of my hand and read it again, whispering the words out loud. Do not sign anything your daughter brings you. My heart started thudding in my chest in a way the doctor would not have liked. I could feel the hot pulse in my throat. The clock ticked on behind me louder now, every second stretched out. Lisa. I stared at her as a child on the wall, that gap-toothed grin, and then at the phone in my hand. It didn't make sense. Daniel wouldn't joke about something like that. He wasn't the joking type to begin with. My fingers fumbled at the screen as I hit call. It barely rang once before he picked up. Edward. His voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it. Are you alone right now? I swallowed. Yes, it's just me here. What's this about? What's going on, Daniel? He exhaled heavy like he'd been holding his breath. Good. Listen to me. I'm going to explain. But first I need you to promise me something. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. All right? I said slowly. What? Over the next few days, if Lisa comes by with any documents, any forms, I don't care if it's a sticky note, you do not sign a single thing. No medical forms, no banking updates, nothing. If anyone says it's routine or just a standard power of attorney, you tell them your lawyer needs to review it first. Do you understand? I let out a short, confused laugh. Power of attorney. Guardianship. Daniel, what are you talking about? Lisa is she brings me groceries. She takes me to the doctor sometimes. She's all I've got. On the other end I heard him shuffle papers, a rustle like dry leaves. I hope that's true, he said quietly. I really do. But what I'm seeing, it doesn't look like a misunderstanding. The word lodged itself in my chest. What you're seeing, I repeated. What are you seeing? He cleared his throat, his professional voice slipping into place. About an hour ago, I got a call from another attorney. He said he represents your daughter. He wanted to coordinate with me on the guardianship and transfer package we'd been preparing for you. He paused. That was news to me, Edward. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my fingers ached. Guardianship. The word felt ugly in my mouth. I'm not under any guardianship. I pay my bills. I cook my meals. I drove myself to the doctor last month. I know, Daniel said. That's why I told him I had no idea what he was talking about and ended the call. But attorneys don't just say things like that for fun. If he said guardianship and a transfer, that means someone instructed him to move assets under someone else's control. And from the context, he believed we were already in the process. My mind recoiled from it, like my hand from a hot stove. Lisa sitting at my kitchen table laughing with the kids. Lisa complaining about her mortgage, about how expensive everything was. Lisa saying, Dad, All this is going to be mine one day anyway. I had thought she was joking. There must be some mistake, I murmured. A clerical error. Maybe he meant a different client. Maybe there's another Edward. I wish that were true, Daniel said, and there was a tired sadness in his voice. But he used your full name. Your address. He mentioned your house specifically. I'm going to pull the property records and see if anything's been filed without your knowledge. I'll check the court system too. Something is not right here. The room suddenly felt colder, though the furnace kicked on again. I became aware of every creak of the old house, every shadow. For the first time in a long while, instead of feeling comforted by these walls, I felt exposed inside them. Daniel, I said, my voice a little hoarse. You're scaring me. I'm sorry, he replied. I'd rather scare you now than watch you get steamrolled later. Here's what we do. I want you to bring any recent mail you've received, especially anything that looks official when you come to my office tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. We'll go through it together. Tomorrow, I echoed. All right, I can do that. And Edward, he added, his tone lowering, do not mention this conversation to Lisa. Not yet. Until we know exactly what's going on, I don't want her changing tactics or hiding anything. Just act normal if she calls. Act normal. As if anything about this felt normal. I understand, I said. We hung up, and the kitchen was swallowed by silence again. Only it wasn't the same silence as before. The clock's ticking had grown insistent, almost accusatory. The bills in front of me blurred. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. Lisa, my Lisa. I sat there staring at the dark screen, my own reflection dim in the glass. An old man's face, thinner than I remembered it being, with lines carved deep around the mouth and eyes. Margaret used to say those lines were from smiling. Right then they felt like cracks. My mind began to flip through recent weeks like pages in a book. Lisa taking my keys and tasking, "You really shouldn't be driving anymore, Dad." Not with your reflexes. Lisa frowning at the folder where I keep my will and the house deed, asking, "Where do you store all the important stuff, just in case? You know, paperwork, bank info, that kind of thing." Lisa sitting right where I was now, tapping her manicured finger on my checkbook, saying, "You should let me simplify all this for you. It's too much for you to keep track of." At the time, it had warmed me. She was busy, she had her own family, and yet she still made time for me. That's what good daughters do, I had told myself. They worry, they help. Now, with Daniel's warning echoing in my ears, those memories shifted shape, like when you stare at one of those drawings and suddenly see the hidden picture inside. The same lines, but a different image. Guardianship, I whispered, tasting the word again. It tasted like metal. I imagined signing something without really reading it, trusting her, like I had done 1,000 times when she handed me a phone or a receipt. I imagined waking up one day to find out my bank account no longer belonged to me, that this house was no longer really mine, that every decision, what to eat, where to live, what doctor to see, would have to go through my own child. If you've never been old, it's hard to explain the particular kind of fear that wrapped around me then. When you're young, you believe you can fight your way out of almost anything. When you're my age, you know how fast you can lose ground. One bad fall, one bad signature. That's all it takes. I sat there a long time, the tea going completely cold, the light outside dimming from gold to gray. I should have stood up, made myself some dinner, turned on the television. Instead, I stayed at that table, phone in front of me like an accusation, and listened to the house creak. Much later, looking back, I would think about that text and realize just how close I'd come to losing everything. If I had ignored it, if I had shrugged Daniel off as an overcautious lawyer, and trusted my daughter the way a father is supposed to, I wouldn't have been sitting at my own kitchen table telling you this story. I would have been in some care home whose name I didn't choose, in a room that didn't smell like my life, with no house, no savings, and no way out. But that night, all I knew was that something was wrong in my family, and I didn't yet understand how deep it went. To understand that, to understand how my little girl became the person who could look at me and see a pile of assets instead of a father, I have to go back. Back before the text, before the papers, before the word guardianship ever hung in the air between us. I have to tell you about my family, and about the daughter I thought I knew. I wasn't always an old man at a kitchen table, clutching his phone like a life raft. Once, I was just a young husband with calloused hands and a head full of determination. I spent more than 40 years as an electrician, and then a maintenance supervisor at the same factory. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest, and it paid enough to keep the lights on and food in the fridge. I came from nothing. One of 4 boys in a cramped apartment over a laundromat, a father who drank too much, a mother who worked herself to the bone. When I was a kid, I promised myself that if I ever had a family, my wife and children would never hear the landlord banging on the door for rent. Margaret and I bought this house when we were in our late 20s. 3 small bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a yard just big enough for a swing set and a vegetable patch. The first winter we were here the roof leaked and the furnace died twice, but it was ours. I remember the day we burned the mortgage papers when I was about 50. Margaret poured us cheap champagne and we sat on the back steps, watching the last scraps curl into ash. "Look at that," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Whatever happens, Lisa will always have a roof over her head. We'll leave this to her one day." I nodded, feeling like a king in a castle, even though the gutters were sagging and the paint was peeling. "She'll never have to worry the way we did," I told her. That was my mission in life. Margaret was the practical one. She kept a little ledger where she tracked every bill, every dollar that went into our savings and my retirement account. I brought the paycheck home, and she turned it into security. She was gentle with me, but tough with the numbers. When Lisa was born, that security suddenly had a face. I can still see the first time I held her. This tiny red squirming bundle in a pink hat, her fingers no bigger than matchsticks. I was terrified I'd drop her. Margaret laughed and said, "You're holding live wires every day. You can handle this." But a baby felt more dangerous than any conduit I'd ever worked on. Lisa grew up surrounded by love, if not luxury. She was smart from the start, too smart sometimes. Artistic, always doodling in the margins of her notebooks, making up little plays and forcing us to sit on the old couch and be her audience. She had a flair for drama. If she scraped her knee, the neighbors 3 houses down probably heard about it. Stubborn, too. Once she decided she wanted something, she wore us down like water on stone. I remember staying up until 2 in the morning helping her build a solar system model for science class. She wanted each planet to light up. I was soldering tiny wires while she painted Jupiter, tongue stuck out in concentration. "Dad," she said suddenly, "why don't we have a big house like Sarah's? They've got a pool and a game room and her own bathroom. Why don't we have that?" I wiped my hands and sat back. "Because, sweetheart, those houses cost a lot of money. And we decided a long time ago that instead of a big fancy house, we'd have a house that was ours, all the way." She frowned. "But I want a pool." Margaret, passing through with a basket of laundry, ruffled her hair. "You've got a backyard and a father who'll set up the sprinkler. That's better than any pool." At the time, I thought those were normal childhood complaints. Every kid compares. Every kid wants more. But looking back, those seeds of wanting, of measuring herself against what other people had, they were there early. In high school, Lisa talked big. Ivy League dreams, glossy brochures on her bedroom floor. We sat her down at the table one evening, the same table where I'd get that text years later, and tried to explain. "We'll help how we can," I told her. "We've got some savings. And you're smart enough to get scholarships, but Harvard money, that's different from state college money." She crossed her arms, eyes flashing. "Why didn't you save more? Other parents help their kids." That stung. Margaret reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. "Your father's been saving since before you were born," she said calmly. "He's worked overtime, holidays, you name it. We're not rich people, Lisa. We're doing our best." In the end, she went to a good state university with a modest scholarship. Margaret picked up extra shifts at the school cafeteria, and I took on more weekend call-outs. We were proud of her. When we dropped her off at the dorm, hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs, I remember thinking we did it. We gave her a better start than we had. Adulthood didn't unfold the way she imagined. A communications degree that never quite turned into the high-paying career the brochures had promised. For a while she bounced around temp jobs, a marketing assistant position that cut her hours, a stint at a startup that folded overnight. Then she met Tom. He was charming in that easy, slippery way some men have. Big talker, big smile, always a new idea. He sold insurance when they started dating. Then, consulting. Then something to do with online sales. Margaret said she didn't trust anyone who couldn't explain their job in one sentence. Lisa said we were being old-fashioned. They married in a small ceremony at our church. I walked her down the aisle, my arm trembling, not from age but emotion. At the reception, Tom pulled me aside, his arm slung around my shoulders like we were old buddies. "You did good, sir," he said. "Raising a woman like Lisa. We'll take care of her." I wanted to believe him. Not long after, they came to us with their first big ask. They'd found a starter home, tiny and overpriced, in a neighborhood Lisa said was an investment. They were a little short on the down payment. Could we help? Margaret and I sat at the kitchen table again doing the math. We could pull from savings, delay some repairs on the house. We told ourselves it was a loan, but in our hearts we knew we might never see it back. "It's for Lisa," Margaret said, closing the ledger. "She'll pay it forward someday." So we wrote the check. The money never came back, not really. Now and then Lisa would say, "We'll make it up to you when things are better." And then there was always another emergency. A pattern took shape over the years. When Lisa was in trouble, she called Dad. When the business Tom started collapsed after 6 months, when the car needed a new transmission, when the credit card bills piled too high, I picked up extra shifts even after retirement age, dipped into the account we'd meant to stretch our twilight years. Each time I heard Margaret's voice in my head, "Take care of our Lisa." Then Margaret got sick. Cancer is a thief that doesn't sneak. It walks in the front door and sits at your table, daring you to do something about it. We fought as hard as we could, but 8 years ago, it took her anyway. Those months are a blur of hospital corridors and beeping machines, but some moments are carved in stone. One of them sitting by her bed at home, the afternoon light slanting in, her hand in mine, papery but still warm. Lisa had just gone to pick up the grandkids from school. The house was quiet except for the oxygen machine humming. "Edward," she whispered, and I leaned in so I could hear. "Promise me you'll look after Lisa. She's not as strong as she looks." I swallowed back tears. "Of course I will. She'll always be our little girl." She managed a faint smile. "You've always been too soft with her," she said. "But that's who you are." Then she closed her eyes, and a few days later she was gone. After the funeral, after the casseroles stopped coming, reality set in. Lisa and Tom had 2 kids by then, and money was tight. One night, my phone rang and Lisa's voice came through, thick with tears. "Dad, we're behind on the mortgage," she sobbed. "If we miss another payment, they're going to start foreclosure. I don't know what to do." I sat there, alone in the bedroom Margaret and I had shared for nearly 40 years, and looked at the empty space beside me. I thought about her last words. I thought about Lisa's 2 little ones, my grandchildren, sleeping in a house they might lose. In the end, I transferred a large chunk of what I'd saved, telling myself, that's what Margaret would have wanted. Lisa thanked me, over and over. But even then there was something in the way she talked that settled uneasy in me. "We're family," she said. "It's all the same pot in the end, right? Your house, our house, it's the family's house. We'll make sure you're taken care of, Dad." I updated my will not long after that. Daniel sat across from me in his office, his desk neat, his tie straight as ever, as we went through the paperwork. It was simple. The house to Lisa when I died, the remaining savings split between her and some small donations to the church and a cancer charity Margaret had supported. No joint accounts with Lisa. I liked having my money in my own name, my own checkbook in my own drawer. Daniel slid a separate stack of forms toward me. "These are powers of attorney," he explained. "Medical and financial. If something happens and you can't make decisions yourself, someone you trust can step in." I stared at the lines where my signature would go. "So that means they could sign things for me?" I asked. "In certain circumstances, yes, depending on how we write it," he said. "It can be very useful. But it's also a lot of power. It has to be someone you trust completely." I thought of Lisa's tearful calls, the unpaid loans, the way she talked about my house as if she already owned it. I thought of Margaret's last request. "I'm not ready to give anyone that kind of control yet," I finally said. "Let's leave those blank for now." He nodded. That's your choice. We can always do it later. I went home with a new will in my file cabinet and unsigned powers of attorney in a folder I stuck in the back of a drawer. I didn't know then how important that hesitation would be. In the last couple of years, Lisa's visits took on a different flavor. After Margaret died, she started coming by more, at first out of what I believed was pure concern. She'd take me to the doctor, bringing a notebook to write down what he said. She'd show up with bags of groceries, scolding me for the instant noodles in my pantry. She sat me down in front of the computer and helped set up online banking, saying, "Nobody writes checks anymore, Dad. That's how old people get scammed." I was grateful, really. It felt good to be fussed over after so many years of doing the fussing. But woven in with the kindness were little comments that, in hindsight, looked different. She'd shake her head when I forgot a password and say, "Good thing you've got me, Dad. You'd lose your head if it wasn't attached." Or she'd look around the living room and murmur, "You're rattling around in this big house all by yourself. Seems like such a waste. One day when we're all here, we'll really make use of it." The once, standing in this very kitchen. She opened the cabinet where I keep my pill organizer and laughed. "You can't even keep track of your medications without a chart," she said. "Imagine if you had to deal with all this paperwork without me. It's a good thing I'm here. All of this will be mine one day anyway. What's the point of you struggling with bills when we're right here to help?" Back then, I thought she was just trying to be practical, maybe a little clumsy with her words. I told myself she was worried about me, about the future. I didn't realize how she'd twisted that idea in her mind. How it's all the families anyway would become a weapon. Looking back now, the warning signs were there, scattered through years of small conversations and little favors. I just didn't understand what Lisa was really building toward, not until the day she walked through my front door with a neat stack of papers, a bright smile, and a pen she insisted I use. Getting old sneaks up on you. One moment you're hauling ladders and coils of wire like they're nothing. The next you're standing in your own backyard, surprised by how hard the ground feels when you hit it. It happened on a Tuesday. I was out by the vegetable patch, tugging at a stubborn weed that had wrapped itself around the tomato stakes. The soil was still damp from rain, a little slick. I bent down, lost my balance just enough, and my foot slid. I went sideways, put my hand out to catch myself, and a sharp pain shot up my wrist when it hit the edge of the raised bed. I lay there for a second, winded, staring up at the blue sky. My heart pounded, and the first thought that went through my mind was not about my wrist, but about how long it might take me to get up. I managed to sit up, swore under my breath, and cradled my hand. It was already starting to swell. I made it inside, one careful step at a time, and sat down on the kitchen chair. The house looked different when you were hurting. More corners to bump into, more distance between the sink and the table. I called Lisa. I didn't want to, but I did. "Dade, what happened?" She practically shouted when she picked up. "It's nothing," I said. "I just took a little tumble in the garden. Sprained my wrist, I think. I'll be fine." "You fell." Her voice shot up an octave. "Why didn't you call an ambulance?" "Don't move. I'm coming over. Right now." "Lisa, it's not." I started, but the line had already gone dead. 20 minutes later she burst through the front door like the house was on fire, hair wild, purse half open. She hovered over me, eyes scanning my face, my arm, my legs. "Where does it hurt? Did you hit your head? Can you stand? Why were you out there alone?" The questions came rapid fire, not leaving much room for answers. "I'm okay," I said, though my wrist throbbed. "Just gave the dirt a little hug, that's all." She didn't laugh. "This isn't funny, Dad. You could have broken your hip. You can't be out there crawling around like you're 40. We're going to the doctor." I didn't argue. The pain was getting worse, and truth be told, the fall had scared me more than I wanted to admit. At the clinic, the doctor poked and prodded, sent me for an X-ray, and came back with a mild verdict. A bad sprain, not a break. A brace, some ice. A warning to take it easy. As we were leaving, he put a hand on my shoulder. "Have you thought about getting a bit of extra support at home?" he asked gently. "Someone to help with heavy chores, yard work, that sort of thing. Just to reduce the risk of falls." I bristled even as my wrist throbbed. I manage, I said. I've been in this house longer than you've been alive, son. He smiled, that professional, noncommittal smile. Just something to consider. We want to keep you safe and independent as long as possible. In the car, Lisa seized on his words like a dog on a bone. You heard him, Dad, she said as she buckled in. Maybe it's time to think about some help. Or even moving in with us. The kids would love having you there. This house is too much for you. I stared out the window at the passing houses. I tripped in the yard, Lisa. I didn't forget my own name. Falls happen. Falls happen to old people. She shot back, then winced as if she wanted to pull the words back. I mean to people who need a little extra help. I just don't want you to get hurt again. That, gain, hung in the air, heavier than my arm in the brace. Over the next few weeks, her tone shifted. It wasn't overnight, but I felt it. Less. Can I help you with that? And more. You shouldn't be doing that. Don't you dare get on that ladder, she said one Saturday when she found me in the hall closet, reaching for the step stool. What were you thinking? Call me when you need light bulbs changed. That's what I'm here for. If I have to call you every time a bulb goes out, we'll be sitting in the dark. I muttered. She didn't laugh at that, either. She started showing up unannounced more often, letting herself in with the spare key. One afternoon I walked out to the mailbox and found it empty. Later, I saw a small stack of envelopes on my kitchen counter. Oh. I grabbed the mail earlier, she said casually. You don't need to be going up and down those front steps all the time. I'll sort it. There's so much junk anyway. You just get confused. I'm not confused, I said, a little stung. She sighed. Dad, I'm just saying you've got a lot on your plate. Bills, appointments. It's not like when Mom was here. Let me take some of that off your hands. She suggested we switch everything to online bill pay. So you don't mess things up, Dad. She added with a laugh that felt like a poke. I told myself to be grateful. Plenty of people my age would kill to have a daughter so involved. But there was a new edge to her helpfulness that made me feel less like a father and more like a project. Then came the afternoon with the folder. It was a bright, harmless-looking day. I was at the table with a crossword, my wrist mostly healed, when Lisa breezed in all perfume and big smiles, holding a slim, navy blue folder. Hey, Dad, she sang out, kissing the top of my head. How's my favorite old man? I'd be better if people stopped reminding me I'm old, I said, but I smiled. Her good moods were contagious. She sat opposite me, laying the folder between us like a dealer setting down a hand of cards. Sue, she began, I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a financial advisor. And he said, given your age and everything that's happened, you should really simplify some of your paperwork. Make things easier on yourself. And on me if something ever happens. I felt a little chill despite the sun. What kind of paperwork? I asked. Oh, just standard stuff. She opened the folder and slid a few sheets toward me. An updated medical power of attorney. A small banking authorization so I can pay bills for you without you having to fuss with all these passwords and checks. Everybody does this now, Dad. It's really just a formality. I picked up the first document, my reading glasses sliding down as I peered at the dense block of text. The title at the top read, Durable Medical and Financial Power of Attorney. A lot of big words underneath. Durable. Agent. All financial affairs. What does durable mean? I asked. It just means it stays in effect if something happens to you, she said quickly. It's boring legal language. Don't worry about it. I'd only ever use it to help you. She talked fast, flipping pages, glossing over paragraphs with, this is just saying I can talk to your doctors. This bit is about paying bills. Really nothing dramatic. Her finger tapped the signature line. Sign here, and we're done. 2 minutes. My stomach nodded. 15 years of trusting Daniel's slow, careful explanations had trained me to be wary of fast, talking about legal forms, maybe. I said slowly, maybe we should let Daniel take a look at these first. Her smile tightened around the edges. Daniel is expensive. Why pay him a few $100 to tell you these are standard forms? I downloaded them from a reputable site. We don't need to make this complicated. I shifted the paper, trying to make sense of the clauses. It says here you can handle all financial affairs, on my behalf without further consultation. That sounds broad. She rolled her eyes. That's just how they write them. I'm already doing all your shopping, helping with the bills online. This just makes it official so companies will talk to me. Don't you trust me? That question landed like a slap. Don't you trust your own daughter? Of course I trusted her. She was my Lisa. I heard Margaret's voice in my head. She's not as strong as she looks. Take care of our Lisa. It's not about trust, I said, feeling my face heat. I promised your mother I'd be careful with legal things. That's why I hired Daniel in the first place. I don't really understand all this language. She sighed, theatrical. I'm already doing so much, Dad. Driving you around, dealing with the pharmacy, the doctors. You make it so hard to help you. Other parents would be grateful their kid cares enough to do this. Her words pricked at my pride and my guilt all at once. Maybe I was being old-fashioned. Maybe I was making a mountain out of paperwork. But that knot in my stomach wouldn't untee. I forced myself to keep reading. The more I scanned, the more that knot pulled. Immediate effect. Authority to manage bank accounts, investments, property. No specific limitations. With this, Lisa said, leaning back a little, her mask of patience slipping, I can finally make sure everything. House, accounts, are taken care of the right way. No more you forgetting things. No more late fees and lost checks. Finally, I repeated, looking up. What do you mean, finally? What's the rush? She blinked, caught off guard. I just mean, I worry about you, that's all. I see you struggling with all this, and it stresses me out. I want to know things are in order, in case, God forbid, something happens. Her eyes were shiny, her voice soft, but there was something hard under it. For the first time in my life, when I looked into my little girl's eyes, I saw a stranger looking back. I set the papers down very carefully, like they might shatter. I appreciate your help, sweetheart, I said quietly. Really, I do. But I'm not going to sign anything until Daniel explains it to me. That's just how I do things now. A flicker of anger flashed across her face, sharp, raw, before she smoothed it away with a brittle smile. Fine, she snapped, snatching the folder a little too quickly, the pages slapping together. Forget I even tried to help. Next time your internet gets cut off because you missed a bill, don't call me. Lisa. I started, but she was already standing, already heading for the door. What? You don't trust your own daughter? She threw over her shoulder. Under her breath, I barely caught. Well, you're not doing a very good job. The door closed harder than it needed to. The house shook just a little. I sat there, staring at the empty spot where the folder had been. My heart felt heavy. Had I hurt her? Was I turning into one of those stubborn old men who refuse help and then end up on the news because they'd been living with 30 cats and unpaid bills? I told myself I'd call Daniel in the morning, ask him about those standard forms. Then another thought crept in, don't bother the man over nothing. He's busy. They were probably harmless. Maybe I was making her life harder for no reason. Shame prickled at me. For needing her. For doubting her. For both. But beneath the guilt, like a quiet, stubborn pilot light, there was relief. Relief that my name wasn't inked on those lines. Relief that I had listened to that little knot in my gut, even if I couldn't fully explain why. The next few days, little things started to niggle at me. A credit card bill arrived with a late fee, even though I was sure I'd paid it. When I tried to log into my online banking to check, the password wouldn't work. Must be a glitch, Lisa said when I called her, frustration lacing my voice. She came over, sat at my computer, fingers flying over the keys. These systems are so finicky. I'll reset it and set up alerts so you don't miss anything. A few days later, I noticed that notifications from the bank weren't hitting my email anymore. When I mentioned it, she waved a hand. I changed it so I get them too, she said. You never check your email anyway. This way, if something looks off, I'll catch it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Those words should have soothed me. Instead, they sat uneasily in my stomach next to that old knot. At the time, I told myself it was all innocent, that she was just protective, that I was just sensitive, that the fall, the wrist, the doctor's hints had made me see shadows where there were none. I thought foolishly that refusing to sign that one stack of papers was the end of it, that we'd had our little clash and she'd back off. I had no idea she was already 3 steps ahead of me. After that afternoon with the folder, there was a chill between Lisa and me. She didn't call for almost a week. No surprise visits, no texts about the grandkids' soccer games, nothing. The silence weighed on me. I kept replaying our argument, wondering if I'd overreacted, if I'd wounded her pride for no good reason. Then, just as abruptly, she swung back in the other direction. One evening, around dinner time, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, there she was with a casserole dish in her hands and the kids bouncing behind her. "Surprise," she said brightly. "We brought dinner. You didn't think I was going to stay mad at you forever, did you?" The smell of baked lasagna floated into the hallway. The kids barreled past me shouting, "Grandpa," like they always had, and something in my chest unclenched. We ate together at the table like old times, sauce splattering, juice boxes tipped over, the house full of noise instead of creaks. Lisa laughed at the kids' jokes, asked me about my wrist, tossed over the diminishing bruise. "See?" she said, patting my hand. "You're tougher than you look." I went to bed that night thinking maybe I'd made a mountain out of a molehill. Maybe those documents really had just been her clumsy attempt to help. Maybe my pride had gotten in the way of common sense. For a little while, things seemed to settle into that pattern. She brought over home-cooked meals twice a week, sent photos of the grandkids, even cleaned out my fridge one Saturday, humming along to the radio as she tossed out expired condiments. She acted like our argument had never happened. I wanted so badly to believe that everything was fine that I let myself relax. That's why, when she showed up that Sunday afternoon with Tom and a stranger in a suit, I didn't feel the trap until I was already sitting in it. I was in the living room, dozing in my chair with the television murmuring in the background, when I heard the door open and voices in the hall. "Dad," Lisa called. "We brought someone to meet you." I pushed myself up, smoothing my shirt, and walked into the dining room. Tom was there, hands shoved in his pockets, his smile a little too wide. Next to him stood a man I'd never seen before. Early 40s, crisp navy suit, tie knotted just so, a leather briefcase by his chair. He had the kind of haircut you only get at expensive barbers. Lisa said, stepping forward, "This is Mark. He's a friend of ours, a financial planner. He helps us with our, long-term stuff." Mark extended a hand. His grip was firm, his palm cool. "Nice to meet you, sir," he said, giving me a quick, assessing look that made me feel like a line item on a spreadsheet. "We thought we'd all sit down and have a little chat," Lisa continued, gesturing toward the dining table. "Just to make sure everything's in place for you. We're worried, Dad." That word again. Worried. They all took seats around the table, and somehow, without anyone saying it outright, I ended up at the head, like the guest of honor at a party I hadn't agreed to attend. Lisa sat on my right, Tom on her other side, and Mark across from me, opening his briefcase with practiced ease. He pulled out a notepad and a pen. "So," he said, voice smooth as cream, "Lisa and Tom have told me how much they care about you, and how they want to make sure you're protected as you get older." I felt a flicker of annoyance. "I didn't realize I was the topic of a meeting," I said. Lisa laid a hand on my arm, her grip just a little too firm. "We just want to help, Dad. After your fall, and with everything you've been juggling, it's a lot." Mark smiled sympathetically. "No one's saying you're not capable," he added quickly. "At your age, though, it's really just responsible to have certain legal structures in place. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It's about planning." "Legal structures," I repeated. My tongue felt thick. He flipped to a blank page. "Before we get into any details, can I just ask you a couple quick questions? Helps me understand where you're at." "What day of the week is it today?" "Sunday," I answered. That one was easy. Church bells had been ringing an hour ago. And the date? I hesitated. "The 12th, I guessed." Tom chimed in. "Actually, it's the 14th, he said, with a half smirk. "But close." Mark wrote something down. "And who's the current president?" I frowned. "You know that," I said. "Why are you asking me?" "Standard questions," he replied. "We ask everyone." "Joe Biden," I said stiffly. He nodded, scribbling. "Great. Now, Lisa mentioned some issues with bills getting paid twice." I blinked. "What?" Lisa leaned in. "Remember the electric bill, Dad? You paid it online, then you mailed a check too, and they had to refund you? You told me you were confused by the website. I dredged my memory. I did recall something about a double payment months ago, some minor mix-up when I first switched to online. Hardly a sign of dementia. But the way she said it made it sound like I was signing random checks in my sleep. Tom jumped in. And the pills, he added. You mixed up your medications last month. Took the nighttime ones in the morning. What if Lisa hadn't caught it? That was one time, I protested. And they were both blood pressure pills. The doctor said it wasn't a big deal. But it could have been, Lisa said quickly. That's the point. Dad, these little things add up. As they talked, it felt like they were weaving a net out of my ordinary human lapses. A late bill here, a forgotten date there. Things everyone does. But in their mouths, they became proof of something larger, something wrong with me. I started to feel small, cornered. Mark steepled his fingers. In situations like this, he said gently, it's common to establish a guardianship or conservatorship. Purely for protection, of course. It gives someone you trust the legal ability to help manage things, make decisions if you're ever unable to. The word hit me like ice down my back. Guardianship, I repeated. That's for people who can't take care of themselves. I'm not incompetent. Lisa rushed in. We're not saying you are, Dad. It's not that we think you're incompetent. It's just a legal structure so we can help you more easily. You'd still be in control of your life. This is just a safety net. I heard what she said. I also heard what she didn't say. You'd still be in control, as long as we let you. Mark reached into his briefcase again and pulled out a small stack of papers, sliding them across the table toward me with that same calm smile. These are just some standard forms, he said. An application to designate Lisa as your legal guardian, a durable power of attorney. A few consents so we can speak to your banks and doctors. Nothing here takes away your rights. It just formalizes the help you're already getting. I looked down at the pages. The text swam a little, my mouth had gone dry. Application for guardianship was right there in bold. Durable power of attorney, again. Places for my signature marked with little sticky flags. My gut screamed at me. Every instinct honed from years of double-checking electrical panels before flipping a main switch kicked in. I thought we talked about this, I said slowly. I told you I'd want my lawyer to look at anything before I signed it. Mark chuckled softly, the sound not reaching his eyes. Bringing in another attorney at this stage is overkill, Edward. It'll just rack up fees for no reason. We're not trying to take you to court or anything. We're trying to keep you out of trouble. Lisa's voice rose, sharper than before. Dad, you're being stubborn. You forgot your medication just last week. You called me to ask what pill was which. What if I hadn't picked up? What if you double the dose someday? I winced. I had called her that day, the labels too small for my tired eyes. It had felt like an innocent ask at the time. Now it was ammunition. Do you want to end up like those horror stories on the news? She pressed. Old people found alone and confused. Their lights turned off because they forgot to pay. We're trying to prevent that. Why are you fighting us? Tears glistened in her eyes. Tom put a hand on her shoulder, playing the supportive husband. His gaze flicking to me with a hint of accusation. They're just trying to help, he said. But you make Lisa feel like she's some kind of thief every time she brings up this stuff. Guilt washed over me, thick and suffocating. Was that what I was doing? Making my own daughter feel like a criminal for wanting to protect me. But beneath it, under all the layers of shame and fear, that small, stubborn pilot light of self-preservation burned. I cleared my throat, my hands trembling slightly as I pushed the papers back toward Mark. I'm not signing anything today, I said. My voice shook, but I didn't let it break. I appreciate your concern. I do. But I won't put my name on any legal documents without Daniel looking them over. That's final. Mark's pleasant mask slipped for a fraction of a second. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed just a hair. Then the smoothness snapped back into place. Of course, he said, though his tone had cooled. If that makes you more comfortable. Lisa, on the other hand, didn't bother hiding her frustration. Unbelievable, she muttered. Then, louder, you'd rather trust some lawyer you barely see over your own family, over me. It's not about trust. I began. The words feeling familiar, tired. I. She pushed her chair back abruptly, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. I can't do this, she said, voice shaking. Tears spilled over now. Whether from real hurt or performance, I couldn't tell. I kill myself trying to make sure you're safe, and you act like I'm out to get you. Do you know how that makes me look to Tom? To the kids. Like I'm some vulture circling your house. Tom stood too, rubbing her back. Maybe we should go, he said. Give your dad some time to think. I sat there, stunned, watching them gather their things. Lisa snatched the documents off the table, shoved them back into Mark's folder. As they headed to the door, she turned back to me, eyes red. We're just trying to help, she said, and you're making me feel like I'm crazy. Like I'm trying to steal from you. I never said that, I replied helplessly. Forget it, she snapped. We'll let the judge decide whether you're capable or not. The words hit me like a slap, but before I could respond, they were gone. The front door closed with a hollow thud that echoed down the hallway. The house was suddenly too quiet. I sank back into my chair, my whole body buzzing like I just walked away from near electrocution. I replayed every word, every look, over and over, trying to decide if I'd been the unreasonable one. Had I forgotten my pills? Yes, once. Had I double paid that bill? Yes, months ago. Did I sometimes lose track of what day it was? Sure. Didn't everyone? Or was I kidding myself? Was I slowly slipping, too proud to admit it? A darker thought crept in. Maybe they were right. Maybe I did need someone to take charge before I made a mess of what little I had left. Then, as if on cue, another memory surfaced. Sitting in Daniel's office years earlier, him explaining guardianships in that calm, measured way of his. Be careful with these, he'd said. In the right hands, they're a safety net. In the wrong hands, they're a cage. I've seen families use them to push elders into homes they don't want, sell houses they didn't agree to, drain accounts. Always for their own good, of course. I rubbed my temples. Which was this? A net or a cage? The next few days did nothing to answer that question. A letter arrived in my mailbox addressed to the estate of Edward Morrison. I stood on the porch staring at it. My own name written like I was already gone. Probably a clerical error, I muttered, but my fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a generic flyer about funeral plans, nothing sinister. Still, it felt like the universe making a cruel joke. Then a call from the bank. Mr. Morrison, the woman said, we're just calling to confirm the change in primary contact information on your checking account. We have your daughter Lisa listed now as the first point of contact. Is that correct? My grip tightened on the phone. I never requested that, I said. I didn't authorize any changes. There was a pause. Oh, she said. Well, we received a signed form last week. It had your name on it. Perhaps your daughter filled it out for you. My heart hammered. I'd like a copy of that form, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. A day later, the doctor's office left a message. Just calling to confirm we received the paperwork your daughter submitted to designate her as your primary medical decision maker. The receptionist chirped. We'll have that on file going forward. Paperwork your daughter submitted. I hadn't signed a single thing, and yet, piece by piece, someone was rearranging my life as if I already belonged to them. I sat at the table that evening with a stack of mail and a growing sense of dread, when another envelope caught my eye. Thick, official-looking, with the county court's seal stamped in the corner. My name was on it. Just my name. No state of, no, to whom it may concern. My fingers felt numb as I slid a knife under the flap and pulled out the papers inside. The first line I read made my vision blur. In that moment, I understood that this wasn't just a family disagreement or a difference of opinion about what was best for me. This was an attack. Careful, calculated, wearing the mask of concern. And I was the target. The first line on that court paper took the air right out of my lungs. Notice of hearing in the matter of the guardianship of Edward Morrison. I read it once, then again, tracing the letters with my eyes like maybe I'd misread my own name. But there it was, black ink on white paper, as official as a death certificate. My hands trembled as I flipped to the next page. Petition for appointment of guardian. Petitioner Lisa Carter, nigh Morrison. Relationship to proposed ward daughter. Proposed ward, that was me. My vision narrowed to a tunnel as I scanned the text beneath. The petitioner asserts that the proposed ward is no longer capable of managing his financial and personal affairs due to episodes of confusion, forgetfulness, and unsafe behavior. Episodes of confusion, unsafe behavior. They'd left lines for supporting statements. I recognized Lisa's cursive in one, Tom's heavy block letters in another. They read like horror stories about some poor old fool I barely recognized. On multiple occasions, my father has forgotten to take his medications or taken the wrong dosage. When confronted, he appeared disoriented and could not recall our prior discussions. Recently, he fell in his backyard while attempting to perform yard work he is no longer physically capable of. He did not inform anyone until hours later. On at least 2 occasions, he has double paid bills or missed due dates, resulting in late fees and service warnings. There were even things that were flat out false. He has left the stove on more than once and nearly started a fire. That never happened. I would have remembered almost burning down my own kitchen. Each line took a normal human mistake and twisted it into evidence that I was a danger to myself. I flipped to the section that laid out what Lisa was asking for. Proposed guardian Lisa Carter. Powers sought: full authority over all financial accounts and property of the ward, including but not limited to checking, savings, retirement accounts, and real property. Full authority to make medical and personal care decisions for the ward, including placement in residential care facilities if deemed necessary for his safety and well-being. Authority to sell or transfer assets as needed for the ward's benefit. And at the bottom, in crisp type, a hearing date circled like a news 3 weeks from that day. I stared at that paragraph about selling property until the words blurred. My house. Margaret's and my house. A's needed for the ward's benefit. Whose idea of benefit? Exactly. If I had signed those papers Lisa and Mark had tried to shove in front of me, I realized with a cold, crawling horror, I wouldn't even be reading this. They wouldn't need a court to declare me incompetent. They'd already have all the power they needed. My phone lay on the table, face down where I dropped it earlier. I picked it up with fingers that didn't feel like mine and scrolled to Daniel's number. When he answered on the first ring, his hello was already tight. Daniel, I managed, my voice rough. Is this some kind of joke? He didn't ask what I meant. You got the notice, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm looking at it right now, I said. Guardianship, petition. All these lies. My own daughter's name on it. What is this? I just got a copy faxed to my office half an hour ago, he said. I've been trying to reach you since. That's why I sent the text. Edward, listen to me. I know this is a shock. But we have time to respond. To respond. I repeated, my eyes bouncing over the phrases again as if they might rearrange themselves. My own child is asking the court to declare me incompetent so she can take my house. How do you respond to that? With facts, he said. With evidence. With witnesses. But we need to be thorough. I want you to bring every piece of mail you've gotten in the last few weeks, any forms Lisa left, anything you've signed or refused to sign, to my office tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock. Can you do that? I swallowed. My mouth was so dry it hurt. Yes, I said.
Yes, I can. Good.
And Edward, his voice softened a notch. Don't call Lisa. Don't confront her. Not yet. Just breathe tonight, as best you can. We'll go through this together. A breathe. As if my own daughter hadn't just put in writing to a judge that I was no longer fit to live my own life. Sleep didn't visit me much that night. I sat at the kitchen table with a battered manila folder and went through every envelope on the counter, every unopened flyer, every bill. I kept thinking about Lisa, at 8 years old with cake frosting on her chin. And then I'd see her signature under a paragraph about my declining mental faculties, and my stomach would twist. By morning I was outside Daniel's office 10 minutes before it opened, clutching that folder like it held my last scraps of dignity. His receptionist ushered me in as soon as I stepped through the door. Daniel was there, sleeves rolled up. The guardianship petition spread out on his desk already. More papers stacked neatly beside it. He stood when he saw me. Edward, he said, coming around the desk, not offering a handshake, just a steadying hand on my elbow as I lowered myself into the chair. I'm glad you came in. He always called me Edward, not Mr. Morrison. It was a small thing, but it felt human, not clinical. I set my folder down. I read it. I said, Every line. Is any of this normal? He took a breath. It's not uncommon for adult children to petition for guardianship when they're truly concerned, he said carefully. But they're supposed to be honest. They're supposed to use it as a last resort, not a shortcut. He tapped the petition with a finger. These papers, Edward, your daughter is asking the court to declare you legally incompetent. If the judge agrees, she would have the power to make every major decision for you. Financial, medical, even where you live. Even if I don't agree, I asked. Especially if you don't agree, he said. That's the point of guardianship. Once it's granted, you can't just revoke it because you don't like what she's doing. He slid a few other documents toward me. I pulled some records after that call from her attorney. There's a mortgage pre-approval here in Lisa and Tom's names, dated 2 weeks ago. Under assets and projected income, it mentions anticipated inheritance proceeds and lists your house as an unencumbered property. He picked up another paper, and this is a comparative market analysis from a real estate firm on your address. Requested by Lisa Carter. They've already started the conversation about selling. My ears rang. So while she was bringing me casseroles and telling me she was worried, I said slowly, she was also shopping my house around. I'm afraid so, Daniel said. Something inside me cracked then. I'd held it together through the reading, through the phone call, through the night. But hearing it laid out like that, in calm, professional tones, broke whatever dam I'd built. How could my own child do this to me? The words came out in a whisper, then louder. I gave her everything I could. I pulled money from my savings to keep her house afloat. I was the one she called when she needed help, and now she wants the law to call me crazy so she can take my house. Daniel waited, giving me space to wipe my face with the back of my hand. He handed me a box of tissues without a word. For the last few weeks, I said, voice shaking. They kept telling me I was forgetting things, that I was mixing up pills, bills, days. They brought that man, Mark, and he asked me those questions like I was some specimen. I started to think maybe they were right. Maybe I was losing it. He shook his head. You wouldn't be sitting here, with this folder, if you were. You caught this in time. That makes all the difference. He turned his computer screen slightly so I could see. Let me explain how this works in plain terms. Right now, you still have all your rights. You can sign contracts, make decisions, live where you want. Lisa has petitioned the court to appoint her as your guardian. At the hearing, the judge will look at her petition, any evidence she brings, and any evidence we bring to the contrary. And if the judge believes her, I asked. Then she would be appointed your guardian, he said. She could be given authority over your bank accounts, your house, your medical decisions. She could move you into a facility, sell this house for your benefit, and there wouldn't be much you could do. I felt sick. And people do this to their parents? I asked, on purpose. He met my eyes. More often than you'd like to think, he said quietly. Sometimes it's necessary and done with love. Sometimes it's not. Blood doesn't always mean loyalty. He leaned back, folding his hands. The good news is, you're not helpless here. You haven't signed a power of attorney. You're here, understanding what's happening, making your own choices. That's crucial. So what do we do? I asked. Sit and wait for the judge to stamp incompetent on my forehead. A flicker of something like determination sparked through my fear. Underneath the hurt, anger was waking up. No, he said. We fight back. We file a formal objection to the guardianship. We get independent evaluations from a doctor or psychologist who can attest to your capacity. We gather statements from people who know you, neighbors, your pastor, friends, who can say you handle your affairs. We document everything Lisa and Tom have said and done. He nodded toward my folder. That's why I wanted you to bring all your mail. Let's see what, if anything, has been changed without your consent. We spent the next half hour spreading papers across his desk like a strange, sad college of my life. Bank statements, utility bills, notices. He picked up one form with a frown. This change of primary contact at the bank, he said. Did you sign this? I squinted at the signature line. It was my name, more or less. The swoop of the E, the tail of the N. But something was off. The letters were rounder, too careful, like someone copying rather than writing. I don't remember seeing that form, I said. If I had, I would have asked you. He pulled out another sheet from the stack I'd brought. Here, same thing at your phone company. Primary contact changed to Lisa. Again, a signature that looks like yours, but not quite. He tapped the pages with his pen. I can't say definitively, I'm not an expert, but these signatures concern me. We may want to have a handwriting specialist look at them. If someone signed your name without your permission, that's forgery. And it doesn't play well in front of a judge. My stomach turned. It was one thing to suspect manipulation. It was another to see evidence that someone might have literally been forging my name. I told you about that first batch of papers she brought, I said softly. The ones I refused to sign. Do you think? I think you did the right thing by refusing, he said. And I think we should assume from this point on that Lisa and whoever is advising her are willing to stretch the truth, which means we need to be precise. Everything documented. Dates, times, what was said. No more verbal agreements. He scribbled notes as he spoke. I'm going to file your objection to the guardianship this week. I'll also schedule you for a capacity evaluation with a doctor I trust. He's thorough and fair. If he says you're competent, that will carry a lot of weight. He looked up at me. I won't lie to you, Edward. Guardianship abuse is hard to fight if judges think it's for your own good. The system tends to err on the side of protection. But you're here early. You're coherent. You have a track record of managing your own affairs. That gives us a strong starting position. I nodded slowly. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my gut. But now there was something else wrapped around it. Anger, yes, but also a faint, stubborn thread of hope. What about Lisa? I asked. Do I call her, tell her I know? He shook his head firmly. Not yet. If you confront her now, she may change her tactics, hide things, coach witnesses. We want her feeling confident, acting naturally. The more she reveals her true intentions in her own words, the better for us. He slid the guardianship petition back toward me and tapped on the section listing my supposed episodes. I want you to go home, write down your version of each of these, he said. What really happened with the pills, the bills, the fall, dates, as best you remember. Any witnesses, bring that back to me in a few days. And if she or Tom come by, write down what they say afterward. Think of it as keeping a log. I exhaled long and shaky. You really think I have a chance? I asked. I do, he said. You're not some isolated elder with no support. You came to me. That shows capacity in itself. And we already have hints of financial motive on their side. Mortgage applications, market analyses, questionable signatures. He leaned forward, his eyes steady on mine. If we do this right, Edward, she won't just lose the guardianship. She might lose her claim to your estate altogether. Judges do not like seeing their courts used as tools for greed. The idea of cutting my own daughter out of my will made my chest ache. But so did the thought of her cutting me out of my own life. For the first time since this nightmare started, I said later, thinking back on that moment in Daniel's office, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Hope, wrapped in anger. I left his office that day clutching a new kind of folder, not just bills and notices, but the beginnings of a case. On the way home, the world looked sharper. Less like a blur I was drifting through and more like a place I still had a stake in. I thought the fight was just between me and my daughter. I was wrong. As Daniel and I started building my defense, it became clear Lisa hadn't come up with this plan on her own. She'd had help, and we were about to shine a light on all of it. I never imagined I'd sit across from my own lawyer and talk about how to stop my daughter from taking my life away, like I was some stranger she'd found on the street. But that's exactly what we did. After we went through the petition and those suspicious forms, Daniel pulled out a legal pad and drew a line down the middle. Okay, he said, voice steady. Here's how we fight this. He wrote, their story. On one side, our story. On the other. On their side we have claims of confusion, unsafe behavior, and a narrative that you can't manage your life, he said. On ours we need proof of the opposite. And we need to show the court there's a financial motive behind what they're doing. I watched his hand move as he listed things out: medical evaluation, character statements, financial review. First, he said, tapping the pad, I want an independent geriatric psychiatrist to evaluate you. Not some doctor your daughter brings, someone impartial. We'll get a cognitive workup, memory orientation, executive function. It's uncomfortable, but a solid report from a specialist will carry a lot of weight. I shifted in my chair. What if I freeze up? I asked. What if I forget something stupid? The date. The name of a town I used to live in. Then they'll say, "See? We told you." He shook his head. No one's perfect on those tests. We're not aiming for 100%. We're aiming to show you understand what's going on in your life and can make decisions. From everything I've seen, you can. He scribbled another note. Second, I want written statements from people who know you. Neighbors, your pastor, anyone who interacts with you regularly. People who can say, "I see Edward paying his bills, driving, cooking. He's not wandering in the street in his pajamas." Judges are human. They look at the whole picture. Third, we do a forensic look at your finances. We already have some questionable signatures and that mortgage pre-approval. I want to see every account, every recent change. If there's been fraud, we'll find it. I swallowed. That all sounds expensive. He paused, then put the pen down. I won't pretend it's cheap, he said. But I also won't let you get steamrolled because you're afraid of my bill. I've seen too many elders lose everything to situations like this. We'll set up a payment plan. We'll keep costs under control as best we can. I'm in this with you. That last line caught me off guard. I stared at him for a second, then nodded. All right, I said. If we're doing this, then let's do it properly. The evaluation was scheduled for the following week with a specialist across town. The morning of the appointment, my hands shook almost as much as they had when I opened that court letter. It felt like sitting for the most important exam of my life. Except failing didn't mean a bad grade. It meant losing my freedom. The doctor was a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. She sat with me in a quiet office, a framed diploma on the wall, a clock ticking softly behind her. We're just going to talk, she said. I'll ask you some questions, give you a few little tasks. There are no trick questions. Just do your best. She started simple. What's your full name? What day is it? Where are we right now? Then trickier ones. Remember these 3 words. Draw a clock showing 10 past 11. Count backwards by 7s from 100. My mind snagged once or twice, like a record skipping. I lost track at 79 and had to go back. I mixed up the order of the 3 words once, then got them right when she repeated the question later. Every time I stumbled, a flash of panic shot through me. Is this it? Is this what they mean? Am I proving them right? When it was over, she smiled and closed her folder. Mr. Morrison, she said. I can't give you the full written report right now, but I can tell you this: I see no evidence that you're incapable of handling your affairs. You're more organized than some 40-year-olds I see in here. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath until it whooshed out of me. I walked out of that office a little taller than I'd gone in. Back home, there was someone else I needed to talk to. Someone I'd been avoiding dragging into this mess: my grandson Jake. Jake was 19, lanky and perpetually rumpled, with the same dark hair Lisa had at his age. He'd been coming by on his own for a while, sometimes under the excuse of dropping off something from Mom, sometimes just to get away from the noise at home. We played cards, watched old movies, talked about his college applications. He'd always seemed more comfortable on my worn couch than in his own living room. I called him and asked if he could come over, just the 2 of us. He showed up in his beat-up car, sneakers squeaking on the kitchen floor as he walked in. Hey, Grandpa, he said, dropping his backpack by the chair. Everything okay? That question had taken on a new weight lately. Sit down, I said. I need to tell you something, and I need you to keep it between us, at least for now. His brow furrowed, but he nodded. Sure. I took a breath. Your mom has filed papers with the court, I said. She's asking to be made my legal guardian, to have control over my money, my house, my medical decisions. Her lawyer says I can't manage on my own anymore. He stared at me, mouth slightly open. What? Guardianship. Like for people who can't. He trailed off, searching for a word that wouldn't insult me. Like for people who truly can't take care of themselves, I finished. That's not me. At least, not yet. But on paper, she's saying otherwise. Color rose in his cheeks. I knew they were talking about your house, he muttered. I didn't know it was like that. What do you mean you knew? I asked quietly. He rubbed the back of his neck. I overheard them, he said. Mom and Dad. A few weeks ago, I was upstairs and they thought I was out. Mom was freaking out about money again, and she said something like, "Once Dad is under guardianship, we can finally breathe. The house will fix everything." He winced. I didn't think she meant it literally. I thought it was just Mom being dramatic. I should have told you. My heart sank and swelled at the same time. Hurt, because my grandson had heard my daughter plotting my legal capture and felt he couldn't say anything. Pride, because at least someone in that branch of the family tree still had a conscience. It's not your fault, I said. You're a kid. This isn't your burden. I'm not a kid. He shot back. I can vote. I can enlist. And I can see when something's messed up. Grandpa, you're more on top of stuff than half my friends. You're always making lists, paying things on time. Mom acts like you're one step from wandering into traffic. It's not true. His words warmed something cold inside me. Daniel and I are putting together a case, I said. But I don't understand all this tech the way you do. Your mom's been messing with my online accounts. Changing email addresses, resetting passwords. I need to see what's been going on. I need proof, not just my word against hers. Can you help me? He straightened. Yeah, he said. Of course. Just tell me what you want me to do. We started at the computer. He sat in my old desk chair, fingers flying over the keyboard, while I hovered beside him feeling both useless and grateful. We called the bank to reset my online access and change the contact email back to mine. Once we got in, we scrolled through recent transactions. What's this? He asked, pointing at a line item. Consultation fee, $800 to MK Financial Services. My stomach dropped. That's Mark's firm, I said. I never wrote them a check. It says it was done electronically, Jake said. Authorized with your digital signature. He clicked into the details, lips thinning. Did you ever set up online signatures? He asked. I shook my head. No. Your mom handles that stuff when we're together. Or she says she does. We dug into my email next. Jake frowned. There's a filter set up to send anything from the bank to this folder, he said, clicking through menus I didn't know existed, and some messages that were deleted but not permanently. He recovered a few, and there they were, emails from Lisa to Mark's address, forwarding scanned copies of my driver's license, my utility bills, my insurance card. Why would she send those? He muttered. To open accounts. To fill out forms. To be me, I said, my voice flat. We printed those emails, the suspicious transaction details, and I slid them into a new folder for Daniel. Over the next week, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went around asking people to write down that I wasn't crazy. I sat in my neighbor Helen's living room, sipping weak tea as she clucked sympathetically. I'd patched her fence last summer, shown her how to reset her router more than once. Of course I'll write a letter, she said. You're the one I call when something breaks, for heaven's sake. If anyone needs a guardian, it's me. At church, I pulled Pastor Jim aside after the service. My voice shook as I explained, the words tasting sour. I never thought I'd be asking people to testify against my own daughter, I admitted. He put a hand on my shoulder. You're not testifying against her, he said gently. You're standing up for yourself. There's a difference. And if your daughter is in the wrong, it's not unchristian to tell the truth about it. He wrote a statement that afternoon, talking about how I volunteered, how I organized the church's donation drives, how I still read and discuss scripture with a clarity many younger folks lacked. Bridge club friends, old coworkers, even the pharmacist at the corner store. One by one, people expressed shock at what Lisa was doing and agreed to vouch for me. With each letter, each phone call, my sense of self sharpened. I wasn't the doddering fool her petition painted. I was still me. But the nights were the hardest. Sitting alone in that too quiet house, the stack of papers growing on the table, my mind wandered to softer memories. Lisa as a toddler running to me with scraped knees. Lisa as a teenager, slamming her bedroom door and then sliding an apology note under it an hour later. Lisa on her wedding day, eyes bright with hope. Where had I gone wrong? Had I spoiled her? Rescued her too many times when she should have faced consequences? If I had been firmer about money years ago, would she now be trying to take everything in one sweep? More than once, I thought, maybe I should just sign the house over. Let her have it. End this war before it starts. I could take a room in some modest senior apartment somewhere. I don't need much. At least then she'd stop. Then I remembered Daniel's words about cages, about courts seeing one signed document, and assuming you were fine with the whole arrangement. I thought about all the people I'd met in those support circles he'd told me about, elders whose children had moved them into facilities, for their own good, and then sold the family homes. I remembered Margaret's hand in mine, her voice asking me to take care of our Lisa, not to hand my life to her on a platter. It hit me that this wasn't just about my house or my pride. It was about drawing a line, for myself and for every other old man sitting in a kitchen, somewhere too afraid to say no to their own blood. "You're not attacking your daughter, Edward," Daniel said one afternoon as we reviewed the growing stack of evidence in his office. "You're defending yourself from someone who happens to be your daughter." He filed my objection to the guardianship, attached the preliminary doctor's report, the letters from neighbors and church, the bank documents and suspicious emails. He called the bank separately to flag the consultation fee and the questionable signature forms, his voice taking on that steel edge I'd heard only a few times before. "If their fraud department does its job," he told me afterward, "they'll open an investigation. We don't need a conviction before the hearing, but even the whiff of an investigation will make the judge look harder at her motives." We sat in silence for a moment, the ticking of his office clock oddly in sync with the one at home. "There's one more thing," he said. "Right now, it's her word against yours about her intentions. The petition is careful, all dressed up in concern. But people are often less careful when they think no one's watching. If she comes to you again, tries to pressure you, I want you to let her talk. Let her reveal herself." I frowned. "You mean record her?" He nodded. "In this state, you're allowed to record a conversation you're part of without telling the other person. I don't usually suggest this with family, but given what's at stake, an admission from her mouth about why she's doing this could be extremely powerful." The idea made my stomach churn. Spying on my own child, secretly capturing her words, it felt sneaky wrong. Later that week, I mentioned it to Jake in a roundabout way as we sat at the kitchen table, his phone face down between us. "Daniel thinks it might help if I had a record of what your mom is really after," I said, "but I don't even know how to begin with that." He looked up, eyes sharp. "You mean like audio?" he asked. "That's easy. I can set it up on your phone or mine. Hide it under the table next time she comes over and starts one of her 'I'm just trying to help' speeches. I don't like it," I admitted. "It feels dirty." Jakey's jaw tightened. "What she's doing is dirty," he said. "You're just protecting yourself. If she's really just worried about you, then nothing she says will hurt her. Right?" That shut me up. We picked a simple app, one big button that even I couldn't mess up. Record stop. He showed me how to set my phone on the table so the microphone pointed toward where Lisa usually sat. "Just let her talk," he said. "Ask questions. Like, what exactly she plans to do once she's your guardian. She loves talking about plans. Trust me." The hearing date loomed on the calendar, each day X'd off with a red pen. 3 weeks, 2.5. 2. With every document Daniel filed, every piece of evidence we added, I felt myself shifting. I was still afraid, still grieving the daughter I thought I'd raised. But I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a man preparing for a fight he hadn't asked for but couldn't walk away from. I didn't know it then, but one conversation in my living room, one afternoon with my phone quietly recording between us, would decide everything: her fate, my freedom, and the future of the house Margaret and I had built our lives in. The day before Lisa was due to come over, Jake and I turned my quiet little house into something I never thought it would be: a place for a sting. He showed up late in the afternoon, a coil of nervous energy in a hoodie, a small device in his hand. "This is it," he said, holding up something no bigger than a matchbox. "Battery's good for a few hours. Picks up everything in the room." He walked around the dining room, evaluating corners like a set designer. "Here," he decided, finally tucking it into the open spine of an old cookbook on the hutch, the microphone peeking out just enough. You'll sit there, like usual. She always takes that chair, right across from you. It'll catch both your voices. I watched him with a sick sort of disbelief. I can't believe this is what we're doing? I muttered. Hiding recorders from your mother like she's a suspect. Jake paused, turned to face me. We're not doing anything wrong, Grandpa, he said quietly. We just want the truth on record. If Mom's really just worried about you, she won't say anything on here that hurts her. But if she's not... He let the sentence hang. I sank into my chair, rubbing my temples. I changed your diapers, I said softly. I taught your mother how to ride a bike. And now I'm plotting how to catch her in a lie. Jake slid into the chair next to me and put a hand on my shoulder. You're not the one who started this, he said. She did. You're just protecting yourself. And honestly, if this stops her from doing it to someone else down the line, that's something too. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We tested the recorder, playing back a few seconds of our own conversation. My voice came through thin but clear. Jake showed me how to start it with one press and how to stop it with another. Tomorrow, when she gets here, just act normal, he said. Set your phone on the table too, like you always do. She'll be too focused on convincing you to notice anything. He left as the sky darkened, his car taillights disappearing down the street. The house felt heavier after he was gone, full of unseen eyes and ears. That night I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, rehearsing conversations in my head. Ask her what she intends to do with the house. Ask her what changes once she's your guardian. Ask her if she plans to sell, to move you. Every version played out with her laughing it off, or blowing up, or both. Every version hurt. By the time morning crept in, pale and uncertain, my stomach was in knots. I made coffee and couldn't taste it. My hands shook as I straightened the tablecloth, arranged the chairs. I checked the recorder twice, 3 times, pressing the button just to see the tiny light blink on, then off. At 10 minutes to 11, I turned it on for real and slid into my seat. The little light disappeared into the shadow of the bookshelf. I put my phone on the table, screen down, like I always did. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. At 11:05, the doorbell rang. Lisa stepped in with a bright smile and a box of pastries from the bakery she knew I liked. Dade, she sang out, setting the box down on the table, leaning in to give me a hug that lasted just a beat too long. She squeezed my shoulders, almost as if she were checking how fragile I'd become. Look what I brought, she said, flipping open the lid. Your favorite. Apple turnovers. They're your favorite, I said, managing a small smile. She laughed. Well, then we both win. We sat, made small talk about the weather, the kids' schools, a show she'd been watching. For a few minutes, it felt almost normal. But underneath her chatter, I could feel the tension, a coiled spring. Finally, she folded her hands, her smile fading into something more serious. We need to talk about the hearing, Dad, she said. There it was. I took a breath, tried to keep my voice even. All right, I said. Let's talk. She looked at me like one might look at a difficult patient. I know Daniel's been filling your head with all kinds of worst-case scenarios. She began. He's a lawyer. Fear is how they make their money. I just need you to remember that I'm your daughter. I'm not the enemy here. Maybe you should tell that to the petition, I said mildly. It reads like I'm one step away from eating paint chips off the wall. She huffed. You're exaggerating. We had to phrase things a certain way so the court takes it seriously. That's how the system works. If we went in there saying, it's fine, but we want to help, they'd laugh us out of the building. So instead you say I'm not capable of managing my own life. I replied. That I'm unsafe. That I'm confused. You are confused, she shot back. About this, especially. Guardianship is for your own good, Dad. It's so I can step in when things get too much for you. Daniel is just trying to scare you because he wants billable hours. He doesn't care about you. I do. I let a beat of silence stretch, then asked the question Jake had drilled into me. What exactly changes if the court gives you guardianship? I said. Spell it out for me. What can you do then that you can't do now? She sighed as if I were a slow student. I can streamline things, she said. No more arguing with you over every little form. I can pay your bills directly, Talk to your doctors without jumping through hoops. Make sure you're somewhere safe instead of rotting away in this house. Somewhere safe, I repeated. Like where? She shifted, looking away. An assisted living place, maybe. Somewhere with staff, with people your age. You're lonely here whether you admit it or not. The stairs are a hazard. The bathtub's a hazard. The stove's a hazard. This whole place is just one big lawsuit waiting to happen. And the house? I asked softly. What happens to the house? She hesitated a fraction too long. Technically, she said, choosing her words, it's still yours. On paper. But as your guardian, I'd be the one in control of it. We could refinance, maybe pull out equity to pay for your care. Or if it makes more sense, we could sell and get you into a community with support. That's what people do, Dad. They don't cling to old, falling apart houses out of sentimentality. My throat tightened. So you'd be able to sell it, I said, without asking me. She rolled her eyes. You keep saying without asking you like I'm going to kick you to the curb, she snapped. Everything I do would be for your benefit. But yes, legally, I'd be the one signing the papers. That's kind of the point. She leaned in, her voice dropping. Do you have any idea how much this place is worth now? The market's insane. Tom and I are drowning, Dad. Between the mortgage, the kids' tuition, his business loans, this house is our only way out. Once I'm guardian, technically it's still your house, but I'll be the one in control. We can finally refinance and move you somewhere where you're not a fall risk every second. My stomach turned. So this is about money, I said quietly. She bristled. Of course it's partly about money, she shot back. Everything is about money. You of all people should know that. You gave everything to Mom and me our whole life. Isn't it our turn now? Don't we deserve to be comfortable after all you put into this? What about what I want? I asked. Does that factor in anywhere? What you want doesn't pay the bills, Dad, she said flatly. The words sliced through me. I stared at her. This woman who had once fit in the crook of my arm, now talking about me like I was a line on a budget sheet. She kept going, her voice hardening as if she'd been holding this in for a long time. You're clinging to all these old ideas, she said. That the house goes to me when you die, that some charity gets a chunk of your savings, that your name stays on everything until you're buried. That's not realistic. Once I'm legally in charge, I can rework your estate plan so it actually makes sense. No more bleeding money to causes no one cares about. No more you writing checks you can't keep track of. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Honestly, Dad, you're more valuable to us on paper than you are puttering around this old place, refusing help. With the equity in this house, the accounts, the insurance, we could finally breathe. Is that so terrible? I felt my eyes sting. I blinked hard, willing the tears not to fall. I needed my voice steady. Needed her to keep talking, to hang herself with her own words. I passed a cognitive evaluation last week, I said, my voice rough but level. Doctor said I'm more organized than some 40-year-olds. Daniel has the report. I've got letters from neighbors, from Pastor Jim, from people who see me living my life. They don't think I'm incompetent. Her face flushed. So you've been parading our family drama in front of the whole neighborhood, she snapped. Turning people against me. Making me out to be some kind of monster. I told them the truth, I said. That my daughter is asking a court to strip me of my rights so she can control everything I own. She shook her head, furious now. You're unbelievable. After everything I've done, you act like I'm trying to rob you. Do you think this is fun for me? Do you think I enjoy being the bad guy? If you don't enjoy it, I said quietly, you're leaning into the role pretty hard. She slammed her palm on the table, the plates rattling. I had to push things forward, okay? She burst out. Mark said we didn't need your signature for every little thing. Just to get the ball rolling. Changing contacts, paying his consultation fee from your account. That's all normal. You weren't going to do it yourself. Someone had to. There it was. The slip. The admission that she and Mark had been moving money, signing things, pretending to be me. I swallowed, forcing myself not to react too strongly, not to scare her back into caution. You could have asked, I said. Instead of forging my name, her eyes flashed. It's not forgery if I know what's best for you, she shot back. You just drag your feet forever. We don't have forever, Dad. The bank doesn't, the creditors don't. Tom and I are up to our necks, and you're sitting on a gold mine acting like it's some sacred relic. She stood abruptly, chair scraping. You know what? I'm done begging. You want to make me the villain? Fine. We'll let the judge decide whether you're capable or not. And when he sides with me, remember you pushed me to this. She grabbed her purse, the pastries forgotten, and stormed toward the door. Lisa, I called after her. She stopped, her hand on the knob, shoulders rigid. What? She snapped without turning around. I loved you before you were ever on paper, I said. I'd have given you the shirt off my back if you'd asked. I still might have if you hadn't tried to take the skin with it. She stood there a moment, breathing hard, then yanked the door open and slammed it behind her. The house shook. My legs felt suddenly boneless. I sank into the nearest chair, my whole body buzzing with adrenaline and heartbreak. For a moment I just sat there, staring at the spot where she'd stood, hearing her words echo in my head. You're more valuable to us on paper. After a few minutes, I remembered the recorder. My fingers fumbled as I went to the hutch, pulled out the cookbook, and pressed the button to stop it. The little light blinked off. That night, I took the device and my phone to Daniel's office. Jake met us there, his face pale but determined. We sat around Daniel's desk as he plugged the recorder into his computer and clicked play. My own voice filled the room, thin and tired, followed by Lisa's. Bright at first, then sharpening as the conversation went on. We listened to her describe the guardianship as a tool, talk about refinancing, about moving me into assisted living once she was in control. We heard her laugh about me clinging to memories and charities. We heard her say the house was their way out. We heard that awful line about me being more valuable on paper. We heard her blurt out that she'd pushed things forward, with Mark that they didn't need. My signature for every little thing. Daniel didn't interrupt. He just sat there, pen in hand, his face growing more grave with each passing minute. When the recording finally clicked off, the room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the computer tower. He exhaled slowly. Well, he said, his voice low. She just testified against herself, and she doesn't even know it. He clicked back to a few key sections, marking down timestamps. This part, he said, as Lisa talked about being in control, refinancing, moving me, shows intent. Not care, not protection. Financial motive. And here, where she admits to authorizing that consultation fee and changing contacts without your knowledge, that's gold. Jake shifted in his seat. So, what happens now? He asked. Now, Daniel said, we add this to our evidence list. We notify her attorney that we'll be calling her as a witness and that we may call Mark as well. He's not going to want to be dragged into a fraud investigation. If he has any sense, he'll start distancing himself from her story. Maybe even admit that things weren't as she presented. He turned to me. This doesn't guarantee a win, he said. Judges are unpredictable. But this recording, it changes the landscape. She can't stand in front of the court and say, this is all about Dad's safety, when we can play her own words about needing your house to fix her debts. I nodded slowly, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. Hearing her so clearly revealed, with no way to pretend I'd misheard or misunderstood, heard in a new way. It was one thing to suspect, another to have proof. Sitting there, I realized the daughter I loved and the woman on that recording were not the same person anymore. Or maybe they were, and I just refused to see it. As I left Daniel's office, the recording tucked safely into his files. The date of the hearing loomed larger than ever. It wasn't just a day on a calendar now, it was the moment everything would come into the open. The morning it arrived, I stood outside the courthouse for a long moment, staring up at the stone pillars, feeling very small. Inside those walls, my daughter would stand up and tell a judge I was unfit to run my own life. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I knew I had something solid to stand on too. I walked into that courtroom alone, but I wasn't defenseless anymore. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish, the way every government building seems to. As I walked through the metal detector, shoes squeaking on the worn tiles, I felt like a child again. Small, out of place, surrounded by people who looked like they knew exactly where they were going. Jake walked at my side, hands shoved into his pockets, his jaw clenched. Daniel was just ahead, a leather briefcase in one hand, his other hand resting lightly on my shoulder now, and then to steer me toward the right hallway. My name, my full name, was on the electronic docket screen outside the courtroom, right under the words, Guardianship Petition. Seeing it there, for everyone to read, made my stomach twist. Across the hall, Lisa stood with Tom and Mark and another man in a suit I didn't recognize. Their attorney, I assumed. They were huddled together, talking in low voices. Lisa glanced up, saw me, and for a half-second her face flickered, something like guilt or fear, before it hardened into a mask. Tom's eyes were flat. Mark looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Remember," Daniel murmured, leaning toward me, "you don't have to look at them if you don't want to. Just listen, answer honestly when you're asked, and let me handle the rest." I nodded, but my eyes strayed back to my daughter anyway. It was strange, registering for what felt like the first time that she and I were on opposite sides of a line that couldn't be unseen. She used to reach for my hand crossing a street. Now we'd each chosen a lawyer to hold on to instead. When the bailiff opened the door and called our case, my legs felt like they were made of sand. I made my way to the table Daniel indicated, lowered myself into the chair, and folded my hands to hide their trembling. The judge was a woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled back, glasses perched low on her nose. She looked like someone I might have known from church, which for some reason made this feel both more and less terrifying. We all rose, then sat again. Lisa's attorney stood first, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor," he began, voice smooth, "we are here today because my client, Mrs. Lisa Carter, has had the heartbreaking experience of watching her father decline. She has stepped up, as any loving daughter would, to ensure his safety and well-being through a guardianship petition." He painted a picture with careful strokes, an old man living alone, confused, forgetting meals, mixing up pills, falling in the yard, double paying bills. Little pieces of truth stretched over a frame of exaggeration until they looked monstrous. "Mr. Morrison has been resistant to offers of help," the attorney said, glancing my way with a practiced expression of concern. "We'll believe a limited guardianship, with his daughter as guardian, is the least restrictive means of protecting him from the very real dangers he now faces." My fists clenched under the table. Every instinct screamed to jump up and shout, "That's not who I am." But I stayed seated, jaw tight, feeling Jakey's presence behind me like a small anchor. When it was Daniel's turn, he rose without any theatrics. "Your Honor," he said, "we do not dispute that Mr. Morrison is aging, or that he, like any man approaching 70, has had ordinary lapses of memory or a fall in his yard. What we dispute, and will show, is the narrative that he is incompetent, and the assertion that this petition is driven primarily by concern. We will present evidence that Mr. Morrison remains capable of managing his affairs, and that there are strong financial incentives motivating this request for guardianship." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm was its own kind of power. Lisa testified first. She took the stand with a tissue already in hand, eyes shining. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed every word. "It's been so hard, Your Honor," she said, voice trembling just enough. "Watching my dad slip. He repeats the same stories several times in one conversation. He forgets whether he's eaten. I found his pills all mixed up in the organizer. He fell in the backyard and didn't even tell me until later. Some of it was true, technically. I did repeat stories sometimes. I had mixed up the pill slots once. I had fallen. But the way she strung those facts together, leaving out all the context, made it sound like I was one breath away from wandering off barefoot in my pajamas." Tom followed, adding color. "I love my father-in-law," he said, hand on his heart. "But it's obvious he's not the man he used to be. He calls us confused about bills, forgets appointments. We're terrified he's going to be taken advantage of, or hurt himself. Lisa is just trying to do the responsible thing." Then Mark took the stand, posture stiff. "A's their financial advisor," he said. "I advised them that, given the risk factors, age, living alone, recent fall, it would be prudent to consider legal structures like guardianship to ensure Mr. Morrison's assets are managed properly for his benefit. We were attempting to be proactive, not predatory." He chose his words carefully, like someone picking their way through a minefield. When they were done, Daniel stood for cross-examination, shuffling a neat stack of papers. Mrs. Carter, he began, you stated that your father mixes up his medications regularly. How many specific incidents can you recall? She blinked. Several, she said. It's happened a lot. Can you give us dates? She fumbled. Well, there was last month and before that, I don't remember the exact days, but… He held up a document. According to pharmacy records, Mr. Morrison picked up his prescriptions on schedule, and there are no notes of adverse events. You yourself texted him 3 weeks ago saying, proud of you for keeping your pills straight. Dad, does that refresh your memory? Her mouth tightened. I was encouraging him, she said. That doesn't mean there weren't issues. He moved on. You mentioned your father double paid an electric bill. You didn't mention that when it happened, he caught the error himself and called the company to resolve it, did you? She shifted in her seat. He called me first, she said. He was confused, but he resolved it. Daniel said, with your assistance, perhaps, but he handled it. He introduced the evaluation report from the geriatric psychiatrist. The judge took a moment to read the highlighted portions. Dr. Harris concludes that Mr. Morrison demonstrates intact capacity to manage his financial and personal affairs, and shows no evidence of dementia or significant cognitive impairment. Daniel read aloud. She notes that his test performance is above average for his age cohort. Did you know about this evaluation, Mrs. Carter? Lisa's jaw clenched. No, she said. I didn't know he'd gone behind my back to make himself look good on paper. Daniel let the phrase hang in the air for a moment before moving on. He presented letters from my neighbors, Pastor Jim, the pharmacist. Short, plain statements saying I paid my bills, drove safely, attended church, organized bridge nights, volunteered. Then he turned to the financial side. Mrs. Carter, he said, holding up another document. This is a mortgage pre-approval in your and your husband's names, dated 2 weeks after you filed this guardianship petition. Under anticipated funds, there is a line for expected inheritance proceeds, and a notation referencing your father's paid-off home. Can you explain that? She swallowed. We were planning for the future, she said. Isn't that what you always say people should do? Be proactive. And this, he said, flipping to another sheet, is a comparative market analysis on your father's house requested by you. Also done after my daughter's checkbook. The judge's eyes softened just a fraction. Thank you, Mr. Morrison, she said. You may step down. I returned to my seat, heart pounding but strangely light. Whatever happened next, I'd said my piece. After a brief recess, we reconvened for the ruling. The judge shuffled her notes, then looked up. This court takes guardianship petitions very seriously, she began. They are intended as a last resort, a means of protecting individuals who truly cannot protect themselves. They are not, and must never be, used as shortcuts to someone's house, bank account, or inheritance. She glanced at Lisa. Mrs. Carter, I have listened to your testimony, reviewed the medical evaluation, the character statements, the financial documents, and the recording of your conversation with your father. I am deeply troubled by the inconsistencies between the picture you painted in your petition and the reality presented here. She turned to me. Mr. Morrison, based on the evidence, I find that you retain capacity to manage your own affairs. Your occasional lapses appear consistent with normal aging, not incompetence. She looked back at Lisa. Accordingly, she said, her voice firm, the petition for guardianship is denied. Relief flooded me, so sudden and intense I had to grab the edge of the table to steady myself. I heard Jake exhale behind me, a shaky little breath that sounded half like a sob. Furthermore, the judge continued, the court is concerned about potential financial exploitation and possible forgery related to changes in Mr. Morrison's accounts and payment of consultation fees. I am referring this matter to the appropriate authorities for investigation. Mrs. Carter, I strongly suggest you obtain your own counsel in that regard. Lisa's mouth fell open. Tom's face flushed a deep, angry red. Mark suddenly found something fascinating on the floor. The judge's gaze softened slightly as she looked at me one last time. Mr. Morrison, she said, I encourage you to consider less drastic ways of planning for the future, perhaps with a neutral party's assistance. But that choice remains yours. This court recognizes your right to make it. Her gavel came down with a sharp crack. We are adjourned. In the hallway afterward, the buzz of other cases swirled around us. People talking about traffic tickets, divorces, custody orders. For a moment I just stood there, feeling oddly hollow. Then I heard my name spat more than spoken. Dade. Lisa was in front of me, eyes blazing. Her lawyer hovering a few steps behind like he wasn't sure whether to intervene. How could you do this to me? She hissed. You humiliated me. You made me look like some greedy monster. I looked at her, really looked, taking in the streaks of mascara, the tightness in her jaw, the way her hands shook. I didn't make you say any of those things, I said quietly. You chose those words yourself. All I did was let the judge hear them. You chose that lawyer over your own blood. She shot back, voice cracking. Over your own daughter. I chose my dignity and my sanity. I replied. I wish you'd chosen yours. Tom stepped in then, anger simmering in his eyes. You dragged us into an investigation. He snapped at her, not me. I told you this guardianship thing was risky. Now we're the ones under a microscope, because you couldn't wait for your inheritance. She rounded on him. You were the one who kept saying the house would fix everything. She shot back. Don't you dare put this all on me. For the first time I saw cracks in their united front. It hurt and relieved me in equal measure. Jake edged closer to me. Let's go, Grandpa, he murmured. Back in Daniel's office later that week, we sat down for one more conversation among the piles of paperwork that had come to define that season of my life. You're free of the guardianship threat, he said. For now. But we both know this isn't the end of your interaction with Lisa. Or with your estate. I nodded. The victory in court had tasted bittersweet. I slept easier knowing no one could shove me into a facility against my will. But there was an empty place where my uncomplicated love for my daughter used to sit. I think it's time we update your will again, Daniel said gently. Put protections in place. A living trust, perhaps. A no contest clause. Specific language about what happens if an heir files a bad faith petition like this again. You mean, I said slowly, make it so if she tries something like this in the future, she loses what she would have gotten. Something like that, he said. You can still leave her something if you choose. But you don't have to leave her everything just because she's your daughter. You can prioritize the grandkids, charities, even set up a neutral trustee to manage the house when you're gone. I stared at my hands. I never thought I'd be planning my estate around how to protect it from my own child, I said. He gave me a sad half-smile. You didn't win against your daughter, Edward, he said. You won against what greed turned her into. I sat with that for a moment, then nodded. I said, set it up. I'll still leave her something. I'm not made of stone. But I won't hand her a loaded gun and hope she doesn't pull the trigger next time. We went through the drafts together, the trust for the house, the education funds for the grandkids, the donation in Margaret's name, a no contest clause that would make any future legal attack on my capacity a very expensive mistake for whoever launched it. When I left his office that day, the sky was bright, sharper than it had looked in months. The guardianship papers that had once felt like a death sentence were now just part of a thick file in Daniel's cabinet. I walked out of that courthouse, and later out of Daniel's office, legally free to live my life. No one could sell my house out from under me. No one could sign me into a facility because it balanced their budget. But I was far from whole. Freedom had come at the cost of something I'd never get back. The simple belief that my daughter would always see me as more than numbers on a page. The hardest part wasn't the judge's gavel or the questions on the stand. It was going home, opening my front door, and stepping into a house that was still mine in every legal sense, but haunted now by the echo of my child's voice, saying I was worth more to her on paper than in person. In the weeks after the hearing, the house felt different. Nothing had changed, not really. The same dent in the hallway where we'd bumped the dresser years ago. The same squeak in the third stair. Margaret's photo still smiling down from the wall. But the air was thicker somehow, like the rooms were holding their breath. Lisa stopped coming over. No more surprise casseroles, no more grandkids spilling juice on the rug. At first, I kept expecting her car to pull into the driveway the way it always had, even when we'd argued before. She'd show up, angry and soft in the same breath, and we'd find a way to patch things over. This time she stayed away. Jake told me, in a hushed phone call a few days after court, that Tom had banned him from seeing me. "He says you're toxic for the family," Jake muttered. "That you tried to destroy Mom." I sat with that for a moment. "And what do you think?" I asked. "I think they're wrong," he said. "I think you just didn't let them walk all over you." "I'm proud of you, Grandpa." Hearing that from a 19-year-old boy, my grandson, meant more than I can put into words. For a couple of weeks we stuck to texts and the occasional call. Jake would slip off to the park, sit on a bench, and talk to me like some kind of secret agent giving a report. "Mom's freaking out," he said once. "Some investigator called asking about bank stuff with Mark. Dad's mad because they're dragging his name into it." I heard whispers, too, from Daniel. The bank had indeed opened a file. Someone from a financial crimes unit had contacted his office about the signatures and the consultation fee. Mark's firm was cooperating fully, which usually means someone's scrambling to protect themselves. I didn't revel in it. There was a grim sort of justice in knowing there might be consequences, but it didn't make the knot in my chest loosen much. I went back to Daniel's office one more time, not to defend myself, but to plan for after I was gone. We spread the new documents out on his desk. This time I didn't feel like they were trying to trap me. They felt like bricks in a wall I was building around what mattered. "We'll put the house into a living trust," Daniel explained. "You'll be the trustee while you're alive, with a neutral co-trustee who has to sign off on any sale. After you're gone, the trust will dictate what happens. That way, no one can force a sale without checks and balances." We added a no contest clause to my will. "If any beneficiary challenges your capacity or the validity of this will in bad faith," the clause read, "they forfeit their inheritance and their share is redistributed." I sat there, the pen heavy in my hand, as we adjusted the numbers. Lisa would still get something. A modest amount, enough that I couldn't be accused of pure spite. The majority, though, went into education funds for the grandkids and a donation to the cancer charity Margaret had loved. "It feels wrong," I admitted as I signed. "Cutting down my own daughter's share. We always said the house would be hers." Daniel nodded. "What you're doing isn't punishment," he said. "It's protection. For yourself, for your grandchildren, for Margaret's legacy. You're aligning your estate with reality, not with a fantasy of who Lisa used to be." I left his office with a folder full of signatures that for once felt like armor instead of a threat. Over time, Jake started showing up at my door again, rules at home be damned. "Dad's furious," he said the first time he came back in person, grinning anyway. I told him I'm an adult, not his property. If he can't see his own dad without Mom's permission, that's his problem. "You're my grandpa." He came by on Saturdays with a bag of groceries or a 6-pack of root beer. We played cards, watched old movies. He helped me set up better passwords, taught me how to check my bank accounts on my own, no middleman. I was careful when we talked about Lisa. I never called her names. When he asked questions, I answered them plainly, even when it hurt. "Do you hate her now?" he asked once, eyes searching my face. "No," I said. "I don't hate her. I don't think I ever could. But I don't trust her." "Those are different things." "Do you think she'll ever apologize?" he asked. I looked at Margaret's photo for a long moment. "I'd like to think so," I said. "People can wake up. Greed can lose its grip. But if she comes back, it will have to be because she sees what she did, really sees it, not because she wants something else signed over." He nodded slowly. "You taught me what family really is, Grandpa," he said. "And it's not about who can take the most." That meant more to me than any courtroom win. I knew I couldn't stay inside my own four walls forever, letting this rot fester in my head. At Daniel's suggestion, I looked into a support group at the local senior center, a circle for older adults who'd faced financial exploitation or legal control from family. The first time I walked into that room, I felt a little foolish, like I was admitting to being a victim. Then I sat down and listened. There was a woman whose son had emptied her savings for a business opportunity. A man whose niece had gotten herself named his guardian and moved him into a facility 2 counties away from everyone he knew. A retired teacher whose daughter had convinced her to add her to all her accounts, then run up dead in her name. Different details, same wound. When it was my turn to speak, my voice shook. But as I told my story, about the papers, the petition, the recording, the hearing, I felt something shift. The shame I'd been carrying started to crack, and under it there was anger, yes, but also a sense of purpose. I began volunteering there once a week. I'm no lawyer, but I know enough now to tell someone, get your own attorney. I can help them read a bank statement, show them how to check for changed contact information, tell them it's okay to say, no, I won't sign that until someone who isn't related to me explains it. It's a strange thing, finding meaning in your own pain. If my story makes even one person stop and read before signing, or call their own lawyer, or trust their gut when something feels off, then maybe all of this hurt will count for something. As for Lisa, the door in my heart isn't locked. But it isn't wide open either. I keep it on a chain, if that makes sense. If she ever shows up truly remorseful, not sorry she got caught, not angry the plan failed, but sorry for the harm she caused, I will listen. I'm her father. That part of me doesn't switch off. But forgiveness, if it comes, won't look like handing her my checkbook or the deed to this house. Love doesn't have to mean blind trust. I've learned that the hard way. Sitting here at my kitchen table, the same table where all this started, I've had a lot of time to think about what family really means. It's not just blood. Blood is biology. Family is behavior. Family is the grandson who risks his parents' anger to help his grandfather check his bank accounts. It's the neighbor who writes a letter for you because she's seen you shoveling her walk every winter. It's the lawyer who looks you in the eye and says, "You're not crazy. You're being targeted, and I'll stand with you." Greed can twist even someone you raised and loved. That's a bitter pill to swallow. But it doesn't mean you have to let that greed run your life. Respect for elders isn't about taking over. It's about standing beside. Helping with bills, sure, but not erasing the person paying them. If there's one thing I want you to take from all of this, it's this: love your children. Cherish them. But don't give them the keys to your life just because you share a last name. Keep your own lawyer, not just a friend of the family. Open your own mail. Check your own bank statements, or have someone you trust. Not someone who stands to gain. Look them over with you. And if anyone, even your own child, rushes you to sign something you don't understand, slow down. Say, "No, not yet. I need someone to explain this to me." It's not unloving to protect yourself. It's necessary. That's my story. Now I want to hear yours. If you were in my position, would you still leave anything to a child who tried to take everything from you? Do you think blood alone makes someone family? I'm curious how you'd handle that balance between love and boundaries. And on a more personal note, have you ever felt that someone treated you differently because they wanted an inheritance? Or tried to pressure you or an older relative into signing papers you didn't fully understand? How did you deal with it? If anything I've said sounds familiar, or opened your eyes a bit, share your thoughts in the comments. Someone else reading might need to know they're not alone. If you're comfortable, tell us where you're listening from. It's a strange comfort, knowing there are people all over the world sitting at their own kitchen tables, wrestling with the same questions. Take care of yourselves and of your future. And before you sign anything, make sure the hand holding the pen is truly your own.